Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another NGLCC webinar Wednesdays. We are so excited to have you all with us for So You Think You Can Pitch, a fireside chat with corporate supplier diversity professionals. Before I introduce today's amazing panelists, by matter of introduction, my name is Sabrina Kent. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I'm a senior vice president at the NGLCC. We are so glad to have you all with us for today's program. And just a few housekeeping reminders. This program is recorded, so if you need to step out, don't worry. We do a full wrap out on the NGLCC blog, and you'll find the recording at nglcc.org/webinars. Additionally, we encourage you all to utilize the chat and Q&A functions throughout. We are streaming to Facebook Live, but we are also here live on Zoom. So for those of you here in the Zoom audience, please utilize the chat and Q&A functions as we ask these questions to our amazing panelists today who have a lot of insight to share with you. So please be sure to keep it fun, interactive, send your questions our way. We have a great program ahead. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce today's incredible panelists. First, we have Anjanetta Friesen, the Supplier Diversity and Sustainability Lead at Barilla America. Anjanetta's pronouns are she, her, and hers. Anjanetta is responsible for implementing strategy and execution across all procurement categories to broader organizational goals at Barilla that are necessary to achieve favorable business outcomes with a diverse supply chain. She supports the design, build, and implementation of key performance indicators and targets to more effectively monitor the influence of Barilla's sourcing efforts to ensure a diverse supply chain. Anjanetta has a number of awards and accolades, but was most recently recognized among the top 25 women in power impacting diversity by Diversity Plus magazine. That is incredible. Congratulations to that, Anjanetta. And prior to joining the world's largest pasta company, Barilla, Anjanetta was a project manager for the City of North Chicago Economic Development, project manager for Takeda Pharmaceuticals in procurement, and dedicated 17 years to W.W. Grainger in various roles, closing the chapter as project manager in global distribution and infrastructure design. Outside of her work, Anjanetta is passionate about giving back to the community and activities that will have a positive outcome on the planet for the sake of her children and others. Consequently, this led her to launch Taylor's Toolbox in 2017, a community-based social enterprise nonprofit. Fun fact, Anjanetta is the co-founder of W.W. Grainger's first African-American business resource group, and the original name was Grainger Black Network and was grassroots across 3 locations with 60 members strong in 2010. It was completely member funded. So join me in a huge, huge welcome to Anjanetta. We're so glad to have you here today. Our second panelist for today's discussion is Casey Oakes. His pronouns are he, him, his. He's a seasoned supplier diversity professional with experience leading or supporting corporate supplier diversity programs in the hospitality and pharmaceutical industries. Prior to working on the corporate side, Casey worked at NGLCC, the National LGBT Chamber of Commerce, where he served as Vice President of Corporate Relations. In this role, Casey served as the organization's principal liaison to corporate America, providing consult and support to nearly 200 corporate partner diversity programs while helping to steer organizational strategy and long-term planning. Casey serves on the board of directors for both Capital Pride Alliance and WeBank, the Women's Business Enterprise National Council. He's also an active supporter of the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society's team and training program. Casey was raised in Central New Jersey and received a BA in political science from AU in 2009. Welcome, Casey. Welcome, Anjanetta. We're so glad to have you here with us today, and get ready for a fun combo.
I'm back.
So, as we start, and Anjanetta, I've just asked you to unmute. Hopefully we can get you online here. There we go. Thanks so much for joining us for today. I know a lot of our suppliers have burning questions that you both can provide a lot of insight to. So without further adu, let's just jump right in.
Okay.
So to start, this is directed to both of you. What are supplier diversity folks looking for in a pitch? What makes a good pitch in terms of tone, flow, so on and so forth? Anjanetta, let's start with you.
Okay, so pretty much what I'm looking for in a pitch is, one, I'm looking for energy. I'm looking to really understand your product or service. I'm looking to clearly understand the value that the product or service will bring. And I'm looking to understand what makes you different, right? What makes you different. So those are some of the top things that I'm looking for in a pitch is clearly being able to understand what it is, energy, excitement. Is it something new? The value, and then what's different about what you're selling me versus what the person yesterday is trying to sell me.
It's great
Yeah.
insight and differentiator and value. Sorry, go ahead, Casey.
Yeah, no, I would echo all of that. Differentiators are, I think, the most important thing. You need to understand what your unique value is as a company, and how you would be different than the current supplier that my company is using, right? And make that really clear to me. I would say also supplier diversity professionals are usually generalists. So in a pitch that's coming to me, you might not need to get into the specific certifications or all the super technical stuff. You might want to be more focused on the practical applications and help me understand how you typically work with companies. So I can start connecting dots in my head that I want to introduce you to Margaret or Larry, whoever does that for the company. And then when you get to them and we open the door and introduce you to them, that's when you maybe want to bring some of the more technical aspects of the business. So definitely assess who you're speaking to, where they sit in relation to the commodity that you're selling, and then definitely stress your differentiators.
That's excellent. I love that. And so what I'm hearing is energy, understand your value proposition and your differentiator, and then connect the dots to that company that you're speaking to or the representative you're speaking to. What's their role? And then what does that company need? If you don't know what the company needs, you can't quite fill that niche. And so thinking about that on a more practical level, what should a company bring to a pitch or a matchmaking session? Again, let's have both of you answer this. Maybe Casey, you can start.
Yeah, so I mean, it depends on where you're meeting someone, right? So meeting me at the expo is going to be a little bit different than meeting me at an in-person matchmaker. I think either place, I want to touch your capability statement, but I don't want to take it with me. So that's a weird little nuance, right? But it's helpful to see it and read it and get a sense of it. And then I'm going to want you to email that to me afterwards, because the companies that we work for are global. I don't sit next to the person that I'm going to want to forward to this onto. I don't want to scan it. So I would say definitely bring a capability statement, bring maybe a deck printed out of stuff if it's a matchmaker, with more examples of your work. And then if you have a hard good, a commodity, it'd be great to touch and feel a sample. Again, I think a lot of us, when we're at conferences or at these large scale meet and greet events, taking lots of stuff back with us is not always what we want to do. So what you bring should be a representation of your company on paper, but make sure that the digital copies are how you actually intend to follow up with us. But yeah, and it would just be very different depending on whether we're talking at an expo for 2 minutes or have a longer 15, 20 minute sit down.
Thank you.
Okay, so Casey pretty much summed up everything that I would say as it relates to understanding the venue, right? Versus if it's a one-on-one pitch and you know you're pitching to Barilla, it would be nice to come with something customized for Barilla, right? It shows that you've done a little due diligence, you understand the company, and then you can, clearly tell me how your good or your service is going to help me. So that is helpful. Somebody did mention as it relates to the current climate, right? So right now we're not physically being able to go out to trade shows and physically meet people. So your pitch virtually may be, well, more than likely will be a little bit different, right? Because now you have to really sell me your good or service virtually. And a lot of times it may be, it could be a little different depending on your service, right? So you're trying to sell me something technical, right? Whereas usually I'm able to physically see something, whereas now you have to try to make me see it through virtually seeing it in 2 to 5 minutes. So everything that Casey said, and just kind of really understanding the audience and including what that value is, me being able to bring out that value and hearing that in your pitch.
And I'll just echo on that. So the virtual thing is something I'm really passionate about. Your virtual setting is a part of your pitch now, right? Like, so I'm taking today's webinar in my 11-year-old niece's bedroom in New Jersey today at my family's house. And so I spent a good half hour today curating this lovely pink wall and this, like, I don't even know what this teal thing is behind me, but I created a backdrop because it is a representation of me and my product and service, right? So I think the last Sip and Pitch Friday, there was a social media firm pitching, and they had this amazing, very cool backdrop. It was their office, but it really gave me the sense that they live their brand, that their company culture just came through and how that backdrop is. So I would recommend everyone follow on Twitter, Room Rater. They will take people who are like pitching or giving news reports on the news from their home and break apart like what's happening in their room and rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, and then start to apply those principles into how you curate your backdrop. Like today, I have props today. So this was behind me. I made sure to take this down because a no boys allowed sign would be very off brand for a supplier diversity professional. So just think about those things as you curate your backdrop and you're bringing your home and your office into your pitch.
I love that. Thank you so much. And that's a great point, right? Like I have this wonderful virtual backdrop right now. Otherwise, people would see my dining room area with my onions and my tomatoes and so on and so forth. And I'm a great cook, but that's not what we're here to talk about. And actually, we just had a great question come through to the chat. And I think it's a great clarifying question for folks that might be new to the supplier diversity relationship and talking to corporate supplier diversity professionals. So Angelina, maybe you could answer this one. Russ is asking, can you explain exactly what a capability statement is? And then if I could add a caveat, how long should that capability statement be?
A capability statement is pretty much like a resume for your business, right? It's a snapshot of your company profile, your capabilities, your goods or services. It also can include some of your current customers. It's a snapshot of your business so that I'm able to kind of take that document because we meet a lot of people, right? So handshake, business cards, but that capability statement, one page is very good to have because, you know, we want to be sustainable. So one page document that gives me a high level snapshot of who you are. It includes probably pictures of your good or service, but it's contact information, where you're located, you know, are you regional or national? So it gives me very high level overview of your company. I like the capability statement because usually I forward those on to buyers. And also I encourage all of my suppliers when I meet them in person or virtually, please go register. You can upload that capability statements because I happen to be at work today. I have files and things. Sometimes I lose things. So it would be nice to be able to go out to my database. I know I met someone at such and such show or at NGLCC or at the local chamber at an event. I don't remember. I go search for you and I can pull up your information in that capability statement. So that is your resume for your business. It's telling me who you are, what you can do, and, you know, to the extent of how you can do it.
And I'll just say too, I think the capability statement is an area that's kind of ripe for innovation, particularly as we enter a more virtual kind of work setting. Capability statements were these paper documents that you handed to us at conferences and we would bring them back. But you're emailing them now. So think about them. What is your paper version and what is your digital version? Are you embedding links to YouTube videos, to catalogs with different items? Like just think about ways to make that digital copy more interactive while still offering the same information.
That's great. Thank you both so much for that insight. And folks, I love seeing all of these questions coming through to chat and Q&A. Fear not, we have 15 minutes blocked at the end of this program to get through as many questions as possible. And as I said, I'll also be piping these in throughout. Angelina and Casey, again, this is for both of you. And we talked about this a little bit, but I think it's an important differentiator. In the time frame of a 2-minute pitch versus a 5-minute pitch, what kind of information do you want to know? And what's the most important thing for you to know about a supplier and their companies? Casey, we'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, so I think a 2-minute pitch is really like who you are, what you do, and how do we follow up. There's really not much more time than that. In a 5-minute pitch, I think what you really want to insert into there are a couple of your differentiators and then a couple of your validators, right? And so for us, the shortest of shortcuts are how big are you revenue wise, right? Because that'll tell me whether I can put you in a national contract, whether I need to see if there's a portion of the business that's more regional, or maybe we want to start you, I worked in hospitality in 5 hotels. Maybe that's the type of opportunity we need to pursue it first. So that is one really shortcut. It's not always fair, but it is something we supplier diversity professionals use. Another is who are your customers, right? So if you're working with hotel chains or other pharma chains, like bring out that information, because if they have put their rubber stamp of approval on you, that gives me a lot of comfort to then use my internal capital to introduce you to folks. So those are kind of the things that you want to bring in your 2 and 5 minute. Both are super short formats, and so you don't want to try and dump everything. Really make an outline of everything you want to tell us, and then start to prioritize and then time it out, because there are going to be things that we're going to need to follow up on. You don't need to sell me in 5 minutes. You just need to get me interested and convinced that you're worth another 15, or you're worth a half hour on my calendar.
I love that. I just want to take that snippet because it's so important. You do not need to sell me in the 5 minutes. I need to get a sense of your product and service and the value there. That's great. Anjanetta, anything you'd like to add?
Casey stole all my answers as usual. So I have nothing to add, but kind of understanding the difference, the 2 minute versus the 5 minutes. I think for me, everything that Casey said, knowing who you're currently doing business with is helpful. Yeah, who you are, what you do, where you're at, and who you're currently doing business with. Very helpful.
That's great. And, I want to make note too for the folks that are listening today. These questions actually came directly from our suppliers as a part of our last Sip and Pitch Fridays program on July 17th. So we're trying to make sure that we're getting to the root of the burning questions that y'all have. And again, we have some amazing intellectual capital here for you all to take advantage of and bring home as you develop your strategies. Casey doesn't like that very much. He doesn't think he's an expert, but I know he is after many years of working with him.
So I guess that's
right. So this is a question, Anjanetta, let's start with you. What is the most memorable moment that you've heard in a pitch?
Okay, so a lot of times if the information is provided in advance of the pitches, I kind of have an idea of things that I want to listen to all the pitches, because a lot of times any opportunity to give feedback to suppliers is an opportunity that I like to take. So I listen to all the pitches, but because I'm also trying to figure out, the need of the business where I can match somebody up, taking notes, totally caught me off guard. A lady was pitching, she's got a company that does like, it's dogs and geese, to get rid of the geese. And one of it kind of sits this thing and it kind of it totally caught me off guard, but it got my attention. I wasn't looking for that product or service, but I was kind of like, wow, interesting. She caught my attention. I was engaged. And you know what? I came back to the office and mentioned it to facilities. Do we have a problem with geese? Like, because I ran across this, this WMBE that's what they do, So that was probably the most memorable, was some technology that had this thing that kind of spooked the geese.
Well, I don't have
That's amazing.
That's amazing. So when I worked at NGLCC, actually Chance made us read a book called Blue Ocean Strategy, which is you put your business where other folks aren't competing. And I think that is kind of the takeaway from Anjanetta's point, is in Supplierverse, you often meet a lot of people who are competing for the same space. And we found one there that has a unique technology that gets geese to go away, and that they were the only one that she's talked to in years in supplier diversity that does that. So that's pretty memorable. Mine, I was at Disability In, which is a certifying body for businesses owned by people with disabilities. And I was on a panel and kind of on a similar topic about pitching, but kind of the longer game of supplier diversity salesmanship as a small business. And really the thing that we were stressing to these businesses is that, like, we are people. I'm in my niece's bedroom, Anjanetta's in the office. You can see her pride flag behind her. Like, we're people. Like, you can get to know us and really try and build a relationship. You don't always have to go straight to the pitch. And so one of the things that I happened to mention on this panel, and Sabrina, this will come as no surprise to you, is that, like, one of my passions is Britney Spears. She's an amazing singer and human being. And so I mentioned this on the panel, and afterwards, Supplier came up to me. He does captioning. And he said, hey, my name is blank. We're a live captioning business, and you should know that when we caption, we always spell Britney Spears correctly, because she has an untraditional spelling of Britney Spears. I remembered that when he emailed me. I remembered that him instantly, even though it was weeks later. And that was so brief but connected to who I was and what I care about. Like, it just instantly validated his business, that he knew that her name was spelled a little bit differently, and he tied that to his core capability. So by far the most memorable pitch that I've ever heard. But that's really what you want to be doing, is getting to know us or our companies and bringing that and tying that into your business function.
Love that. Find that personal hook. And I know we'll talk about this a little bit, but supplier diversity is really, you're building a relationship with a supplier diversity professional. They are not your golden ticket to the contract, but they are your advocate. I don't want to steal your thunder because I know you're both going to talk about this. And Casey, frankly, no surprise that the Britney Spears moment stuck out for you whatsoever.
Category on iTunes.
You know, I think that's a really great point to make. And actually, we had a similar win a couple of years ago, actually, at our inaugural UK-EU summit, when one of our major corporate partners had shared with us that she was able to secure a large contract for a supplier that never had a contract of that size before. They actually make bags for like conference bags that can be branded, but they out of old t-shirts and out of old shirts. And therefore there's the sustainability aspect there too. And their relationship started 3 or 4 years prior at an NGLCC event. They would connect on Facebook, chit chat, love your dress, love your shoes, whatever it might be. And then when the time came for the opportunity, she said, hey, I'm thinking of this supplier. I know what they do. Let me reach out. And then boom, they had the biggest contract they'd ever landed before. And it was because they developed that relationship and focused on the relationship with the person and not with the company first, which of course both are important. But from what you're saying, that sounds like it's an important element to being stand out.
Absolutely. And that is a super cool product, by the way. I have quite a few of those samples at my office, and I will typically gift them to folks internally as a salesmanship, an internal sales mechanism to kind of demonstrate, hey, we have this LGBT international supplier who does this, should you need that. So we're planting those seeds for sure on that one.
That's great. And I love that. And again, goes back to that idea of the supplier diversity person being the advocate. So jumping into our next question, I can't believe we're already almost halfway through the hour. What's the biggest mistake you see folks making when they're pitching their products or services? And Janetta, let's start with you.
Oh, for me, I think the biggest mistake is, and Casey kind of mentioned it earlier, is getting too technical. If it's, usually for pitches, your audience isn't always your end user. Now, if it's end user, it's my IT folks that can talk, the connectivity, and, you know, so a lot of times for me, it's getting too technical. Kind of stay high level with pitches and understanding the audience, because a lot of times you lose your initial contact when you get too technical with pitching. So that's something that I've seen a lot of suppliers crash and burn with, is getting too technical in pitches.
My eyes glaze over. I would say absolutely that, but also you have to do your research. So at the NGLCC conference, there's 250 corporations at the expo booth. And I actually used to expo for NGLCC at other conferences at WeBank, Disability In, and MSDC. And then I've done it for Marriott and other companies as well. And there are suppliers who will walk up and give me the same pitch, whether I'm representing NGLCC, which is a nonprofit that's got 25 people who work for it, or work for a hospitality company with, 7,000 hotels across the globe, right? Like, those should be very different pitches. So you really need to tailor your pitch to the company or to the company or the business that you're selling to. Research, and then ask questions too. Pitches don't always, especially in the more informal settings, need to be one way. So you should mention that this company just merged, or that that Anjanetta also has sustainability. So bring in some sustainable elements of your pitch if you see that she has that in her title. So really you want to make sure that you're just not going down the line booth to booth or matchmaker meeting to matchmaker meeting and saying the same thing. It should change every single time, even though your business is the same.
And I just want to piggyback on that, Casey. That is a great point. There is a supplier that I met at our local chamber. I'm in Chicago, so I rep the Illinois Chamber of Commerce. I don't know if Jeremy's on the line. Tons of my relationships started at the local chamber, and actually a gentleman that I met happened to be sitting at the same table. Did not talk about business. We talked about kids and dogs and rainbows, and then the conversation kind of, well, what do you do and what do you do? We had this conversation, and initially I was going to pitch him for packaging, right? Well, once he found out, oh, you do sustainability. Well, let me tell you what we're doing around sustainability and zero waste. And I'm just going, oh, okay. So when I introduced him, I was able to bring a lot of stakeholders, right? So I brought a lot of folks from the plants. I brought folks from our sustainability team, from our packaging team, because, he tapped into that and he recognized, okay, I was really going with packaging, but he noticed, right? Or it came up about sustainability. And so actually, I think the quickest way that we'll probably do business with him is not necessarily on the packaging side, but on the sustainability side. So that's a great point, Casey. Thank you for bringing it up.
Love that. I love that. And actually, I think there's an important distinction here, because we are in a very interesting working world. Anjanetta's in the office for her 1 day a week right now. Casey's in his niece's bedroom. I'm in my grandmother's home in a retirement community in Florida. We are all displaced right now in one way or another. And that's really changing how we do business. So in absence of somebody being able to meet you at the NGLCC conference and get that contact information and start building that relationship, how should folks get a hold of supplier diversity professionals now to start having those organic conversations? And do you know of any events in place that facilitate those kind of networking opportunities?
Yeah, I'll start. So, I mean, I would say I feel like I'm more accessible now than I am when we're traveling. So I do Sip and Pitch Fridays every other week when they're happening, and not only is it great to see the people pitching and I hear from them, but it's also a great time for me to reconnect with suppliers that I've met in the chat feature. I am on all sorts of calls for all different organizations. I think the local chambers, the local NGLCC affiliate chambers, are doing lots of events as well. And so really you just need to kind of put yourself in the spaces that you expect supplier diversity professionals or corporate representatives to be. We're all getting asked to do a lot more in the digital space. We're also like really just eager. I think supplier diversity people are extroverted. And so when you're just kind of talking to yourself all day in your lonely apartment, it's nice to have those outlets. So yeah, I mean, there's not one answer. I mean, keep an eye on the NGLCC calendar, keep an eye on your local affiliates calendar, look at the other local affiliates calendars. Those are usually public too. Just because you live in Jersey or DC or Chicago doesn't mean you can only attend their events. And then, look at other organizations as well. If your business is HR facing, look at what SHRM is doing, right? The other professional associations, and then follow folks or organizations on LinkedIn. I posted on LinkedIn today that I was going to be here. And so this is a great place to connect with me. Don't message me on LinkedIn though. I think we'll talk a little bit about follow-ups, but like for me, my work email is my work email. That's where you should be contacting me. For me, I personally don't check my LinkedIn messages, right? But I use that as an out-facing platform for me to kind of share what I'm going to be up to and where you can find me. But every supplier diversity person is different. I think Anjanetta might love LinkedIn messaging. I don't know.
I don't.
Not a lot to add. Put yourself in places to meet people. Be open. So, I've got like 4 corporate partners, and everybody is all virtual. So my calendar is usually dictated by all the events and activities, along with everything else that's kind of going on. So my goal is to try to get involved, show up. And a lot of times I'm in the comments when I recognize, suppliers that I've met, or I take notes. So my goal is to put myself, just like you, right? I try to put myself in spaces to hear information, to hear pitches, to connect with suppliers, because I'm not able to do it. I can't say, meet me at NGLCC, meet me there, booth number, whatever. So my goal is to put myself in those places so that I can have some interaction and some interface. People have found me all over the place, right? So LinkedIn, I had to kind of limit it because everybody, was subscribing. Somehow, you can always figure out an email address, so people kind of bypass that little process. I do respond to LinkedIn inboxes. My preference is through email, so it's more trackable. LinkedIn, I'm in, I'm out, but I'm always accessible through my email. So put yourself out there, participate. Don't just sit, comment, because usually if I'm not on panel, I'm commenting right with you. So comment, ask questions, because that's another way to get information. Because if you talk to supplier diversity professionals, they'll give you the information you need. When are contracts expiring? What's coming up? Do you have a need for this? Questions. So back to your point, Casey, you don't always have to pitch. Sometimes ask questions and listen. Then you can go back, customize your information. Now, boom, you got something more powerful and more impactful to use.
And Sabrina, can I ask, I know the NGLCC has a big conference usually in July, but you're working on bringing some of those elements in digital spaces, maybe a little bit more spread out. Is there anything you're ready to announce or that maybe you announced and I missed?
Yeah, well, as a first glimpse, we will be releasing our virtual matchmaking program within the next week or two. So stay tuned for that. But I want to also point out, you mentioned something really important, Casey, around the affiliate relationship. NGLCC is not the exclusive place to meet supplier diversity and corporate professionals. You have a local affiliate membership for a reason, and that's to get not only plugged in locally on the business to business level, but also with the local partners there that are ready to do business with you. And I know we have some awesome affiliate leaders here on the line today who can attest to that as well. You know, they're pushing programming out day in and day out to make sure that our suppliers are staying connected. And of course, the Sip and Pitch Fridays is a great forum. And what I'm hearing from you both is that the way to get a hold of that work email right now is to be in those spaces, to show up to those events, to DM you on the chat when you're on Sip and Pitch Fridays or a local affiliate event, so that they can start that relationship with you and start that conversation with you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Great. And there's a question that came into the chat that's actually on our list of questions. So I'd like to jump to it because I'm seeing a lot of people asking to have this question answered. So let's do this right now. So what can suppliers do to get traction with your company outside of using the portals? And what can they do if there's an absence of an RFP or if their company's goods or service aren't usually included in most RFPs? Casey, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, so it varies by company. So I'll say particularly for the commodity areas or the types of services where we don't RFP, for me in the programs I've run, the portal has been like my biggest saving grace there, right? Because when we don't RFP things or there's not an approved supplier list, what that typically means is any budget holder, and like the things I think about are like D&I consultants or people who do trainings or like in-person meeting facilitation, like any budget holder or team leader could go out of the folks that we typically hire for those things and hire whom they want. So for us, in a lot of those cases, the portals are a searchable repository for those teams to be able to find you. I know they're annoying. I didn't want to stand one up in the program I ran, but there's no way around it. And the thing I would say is you shouldn't be spending your time registering in every single portal of every single NGLCC corporate partner. There are maybe 10 to 15 companies on that list that your company is perfect for right now. So spend your time getting your stuff submitted into those portals. Otherwise, I would say for things that don't have formal RFPs that happen outside of the procurement process, sometimes the supplier diversity person is not your number one person that you want to meet or where you want to be investing your time to develop that relationship. If it's, you know, an HR service where it's not going to go through those processes, you want to be building the relationships with HR professionals who are networked within the company there, and then use your certification and your awareness that Barilla, that Marriott, that Bristol Myers Squibb, that Bank of America has a supplier diversity program to sweeten the deal for them, to demonstrate that you've researched the company, that you know about their sustainability initiative, that you know about their supplier diversity initiative, and hey, I'm an LGBT supplier, so that's even more helpful to these things. They're not going to go with you because you're an LGBT supplier, but the fact that you are one and you know about this program that the company has just validates you more as a trusted partner of the organization. But it is sometimes a tougher road, and sometimes it's easier because you're not waiting 3-5 years for the RFP to come up. You know, you're waiting for these more common opportunities, but they are sometimes harder to find.
Yeah, absolutely. Anjanetta?
I register in the portal. Number one, because the way that our organization works is right now, our portal is for all suppliers. There's like no solicitation, right? And everybody in our organization receives tons and tons of emails. More than likely, they're not responding, they're trash, they're being coded as spam. So go register in the portal, because not only do I have access, as Casey mentioned, but other buyers and contract holders and budget holders have access to that information. The first place where I go look, because I appreciate your time, right? Because I know it's redundant and it's like I'm going into a black hole. But the first place that most procurement people go is their own database, because we value the time that you took to enter your information, right? And you want to do business with us. So I don't have to go out and look for you. You're there already. The first place I go to look is my registration portal. The second place, a reason that you should register, is because I'm on the Food and Beverage Industry Council. I also sit on the Procurement Council. So I'm with all of other corporate buyers. And a lot of times we network and share amongst each other. You know, do you know anybody that does this or blah? But if I ran across you and I could not use you, but I'm like, oh my God, you know, so-and-so, you know, I can refer. So I've done that as well, as I refer. If I've met with you, I've vetted you, and for some reason the opportunity didn't present itself with my organization, I am pitching for you outside of Barilla. So go to that portal and register. So that's one thing. Two, relationships. It's not going to happen overnight, because for our organization, we're on cycles. A lot of our contracts are on cycles. So you may have the best product, you know, since sliced bread, but if I'm already contracted, there's really nothing that we can do. So go register, put a tickler out there to kind of come back. But if you email me and say, hey, Anjanetta, I, you know, went through the bid process, or I was participating in the RFQ, can you give me status on what happens? I'll research it and I'll try to get back and get information to you so that you can use it, right? Sometimes it's just a matter of timing. And sometimes it's just not a good fit. So my goal is to always give you some information that you can use, right? So you might not be a good fit for us today, but you may be a good fit for us tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah, and I'll just piggyback on that. You know, we often talk about these portals being a black hole. And you're like, I've registered and I haven't heard anything from anybody in 2 years. Well, most of our contracts, the ones that I've worked on, are 3-year terms. So that's like totally normal. I've had no need to search for this for 3 years. So when you're meeting us at these matchmakers or at the expos, asking those questions about, you know, when is this due or when is a good time to follow up, those are really key things, because you might want to use your sales time, your relationship building time on companies that have maybe a sooner opportunity, and then circle back, make sure your stuff is updated in those portals for when it's coming back around for us.
And I just want to add one more thing that Sabrina had mentioned in the question was, what about non-traditional things? What about, I have a company and we scare geese away, you know, there's no RFP for that, right? So the approach that register in the portal, right? After you register, you can send an email, right? Say, hey, you know, I registered in your portal. More than likely, you're going to get an email saying, thank you for your information. You know, there's an immediate need, a buyer will contact you, right? So you're waiting. You wait however long you wait. Now, follow up, things that have made me respond more quickly are follow-ups that have relevant information, right? So if somebody forwards me an article about how their technology helped do something, how they, you know, pivoted during COVID to do something, right? So when you send a follow-up email and you include information that is different, relevant, interesting, then you lead into, hey, just so you know, blah, blah, blah. That may be a little bit more helpful than emails and chain calling to say, I haven't heard anything.
Yeah, and we're just never going to get off this question because there's a lot to say. So if you're in a non-traditional category, that means one of two things, right? Like, is it something that we're not currently buying today that we don't have a solution for? And if so, the timing for that is not going to be March or April, because the budget's already set, the work plan is already set for those teams for the year, right? So you want to be timing those conversations to plant the seeds that, hey, maybe we should implement this geese scaring away technology and really address that in 2021. So you want to plant that in September, October, like find out what the timeline is there. Otherwise, let's say you're in a non-traditional category, but you know that we're using X competitor of yours. That is super helpful information for me, because then I could find out who is spending the money with that person and see if they're open to switching eventually. The other thing to really understand with corporations is you could have a better product at a lower cost. It doesn't mean it makes sense for us to switch today. There's risk to using a new supplier. There is time that teams need to take to transition to a new supplier, and they don't always outweigh the cost differential or the value differential between the two. So you need to make that piece. And then you also need to hope or, wait for it to be the right time where that team has bandwidth to make that transition and get to the better product. It just might be lower on the priority list.
My last two suppliers that did get business with us were non-traditional suppliers.
That's great. That's really great. And actually something I want to underscore too, jumping back a little bit in that conversation is, not every corporate partner has a portal, but every corporate partner of the NGLCC does have access to the NGLCC Engagement Center, which is our 24/7, 365 connection hub. So if Casey or Anjanetta are looking for particular needs after they've combed through their portals and done their other due diligence, they'll reach out as a part of their process to the Engagement Center to see who from the NGLCC network will fit that bid. So I think it's really important that your My NGLCC profile is up to date, because our Engagement Center team, they will reach out to you if there's enough lead time. But if Anjanetta sends the request at 9 a.m. and she needs response before the close of business, we don't have time to email every supplier. We're going to look at that portal on the NGLCC side and say, oh, okay, these NICS codes suggest that this person could fulfill this bid or help with this opportunity. And so I think it's really important to also underscore that even though there are a lot of different portals, and you've heard here that you should prioritize which portals you're applying to and at what time in terms of the corporate portals, it's also important to make sure that if you hold LGBTBE certification or other certifications, you are constantly keeping that information up to date.
And let your manager at NGLCC know, whether it be Alicia or some other member of the team, like keep them updated on the wins that you're having. Keep yourself top of mind. Build a relationship with NGLCC and your local affiliate chamber too, because we have relationships with them too. And so we're always talking about this kind of stuff.
It's a great point, Casey. And you can always reach out to supplier diversity at nglcc.org to connect with the supplier diversity team, or engagement center at nglcc.org to connect with the engagement center team. So thank you for pointing that out, Casey. And also, to another point is we can be a supplier diversity advocate on your behalf, because if you have a great tangible product or service, when a corporate partner says, do you know anybody who does this? We can say, I know this company comes to mind. Obviously, we're going to pull a list of every eligible supplier, but we'll be able to know off the top of our heads, yes, Casey has that opportunity. He does make marshmallow fluff and is a great person to add to your procurement list for Anjanetta. So jumping over to another question that we sort of touched on and alluded to before, Anjanetta, if you could share with us what your thoughts are. Many suppliers are not aware that the supplier diversity advocate is like an agent trying to get the new player drafted on a team, helping them by being prepared and ready to go to procurement to advocate for their inclusion is a partnership that can span years. And we've talked about that a bit, but can you help us understand the difference between a supplier diversity and a procurement professional?
Yes. So you pointed it out. So one, supplier diversity professionals, we are an advocate. We're your agent. I'm there on behalf of you to find out opportunities, find out capabilities. I am your spokesperson inside of the organization. So me being equipped with enough information about your company, knowing who you're doing business with, really understanding your product offering and your capabilities, that helps. Because also I have a responsibility to the business, right? So the business has needs. They're looking for this, they're looking for that. So I'm that intermediary person that's trying to match up a need for my company with diverse capabilities. But I think the difference with procurement professionals, they have a similar role, right? So they're looking at the business need and trying to match up suppliers that have opportunity, capabilities that add value. But the difference is that I think with supply diversity professionals, we're from the community, right? So I'm going to turn over every stone, because my goal is to be able to provide back a slate of diverse candidates to participate, right? So I'm searching my database. I'm reaching out to, which I have been. I've been emailing the NGLCC enhancement group. No. Because a lot of times I don't have time sometimes to perform really in-depth searches. So I go out to my corporate partners for that support, because they're an extension of my department, right? But also I talked about the different boards and organizations that I'm a part of, reaching out to them. So I'm trying to really do my due diligence to make sure that I'm able to come back, vet out suppliers to include for opportunities. Procurement professionals, a lot of them have experience and they know about databases, and they'll go out and they'll do some searching and try to include diverse suppliers. but I think that supplier diversity professionals is just different, right? So we've got that vested interest in making sure that we can kind of advance and the goals and objectives around inclusion with diversity. And not saying that procurement people don't, it's just a different relationship. You know, I'm on your team, I'm always fighting for you. So be patient, because a lot of things just takes time.
Yeah, I'll just say, like, the best supplier diversity people are working both sides of it, right? And so not only am I talking to the procurement folks about you and your assets and trying to get you a seat at the table to then present yourself well, but like the best folks are also coaching you through that process, and saying, you know, this team is really looking for this, or this maybe was the issue with maybe some of the previous, this is the problem they're trying to fix. And that's a dialogue, right? And so I think a lot of suppliers are at, you know, waiting to get invited into the door to then pitch themselves. And that is certainly a part of the process. And a lot of what we do is just going out and fielding the request. But then once you're pitching, if you have these opportunities, like the best thing you can do is reach out to the supplier diversity person and say, like, hey, I'm going in front of this team on Friday. You know, any information you can share so I can put my best foot forward.
Yep, absolutely.
That's great advice. And we still have so many questions, and I want to make sure we get through all of them, folks. So I'm going to try and combine these where I can, so that we can have our experts answer your burning questions. So Anjanetta, you talked about this a little bit about, you know, non-traditional solutions or suppliers. So if somebody is looking to be an innovation partner to your company, and it's not something you would traditionally be sourcing through a traditional RFP, what does the pitch look like in that case? What type of information are you looking for versus standard products and services? And then also, you know, what do you think those top 3 to 5 unmet needs for your companies are right now? That's for both of you.
Okay, so the pitch information would probably be similar. However, a lot of times offering a trial, right? So having your pitch and saying, hey, you know what, why don't you take advantage of this trial so you can kind of see how it feels or looks, or so I think that kind of helps, right? Because right now, for if we're already engaged with a supplier, to Casey's point, for us to disengage, the chances are slim and none. However, for us to further those discussions, you know, sometimes you have to kind of try to be creative about how you can continue the dialogue and the information. And, you know, so being able to show the corporate partner what the capability is, what the technology is, that's been very helpful, offering a trial.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, it really is helping to demonstrate use and then also help us connect some dots internally. But the big thing is, if we're not currently using it today, particularly in this environment where a lot of businesses are in survival mode, and it's not just the small businesses, a lot of corporations are also really trying to figure out what their business model looks like for the next 12 to 24 months. And then does it ever go back to the way it was, right? And so I would say, like, I have very little capital at the moment to introduce brand new suppliers unless they're in, and when I mean like brand new suppliers, I mean brand new suppliers in like areas we're not currently working in, unless they are in areas that are like directly COVID related. So PPE, cleaning, the fact that people are working from home. So maybe you have digital meeting solutions, or digital meeting facilitation. Like, those are kind of the things that I would say are the best uses of your, you know, sales time right now, if you have those services. Otherwise, what I would be doing is taking a look at who your competitors are, particularly ones who maybe aren't navigating COVID as well as you are, and then figuring out who their clients are and positioning yourself as an alternative to them. So maybe they can no longer do, you know, 100,000 cases of that, but you can swoop in and get a piece of that business. But I would just say, like, the innovation right now is all COVID related, or at least in my experience. And then the business cycle, you might just need to wait until companies are ready to start kind of expanding or investing in capital again.
So I just want to add on, as it relates to things that we're currently looking to procure, to Casey's point, things have kind of been, you know, button down, tighten up type of thing. But we are in the process of kind of looking at our commodities, just to kind of understand the suppliers, the density, And if things kind of shake out in those areas, then there may be some opportunity in other categories. So random things that have been coming up, like for me, is we've been looking at recipe builders and some, we are food, we're pasta, right? So do things along those lines. You're right, Casey. So one of my buyers, he's currently sourcing for metal canisters. I'm like, oh, where'd that come from? But okay, metal canisters. So random things are popping up, right? So anything that we can use to include, we're looking for. So right now, a lot of the operational things are pretty much spoken for, unless there's contract renew, and now we have an opportunity to kind of, add some folks in there. But we are a food company, so of course, ingredients are always top of mind for diverse suppliers that we'll always constantly reviewing. So,
Sabrina, I know there used to be an LGBT supplier who made metal barrels that could do both wine and nuclear waste. I assume maybe pasta sauces too, if they could scale them down, but maybe that's a referral we can get to Anjanetta too.
That, I love that. Oh, look, somebody says here, it's Skolnick. Yep, there we go. Skolnick does the barrels, Skolnik. See how the organic business is generated through being a part of the network?
Thanks.
We also have some amazing, suppliers in the spice industry and other things. So, I always say this, LGBT businesses, we span every single industry. And so maybe it's the nuclear waste metal barrels being repurposed for canned goods for Barilla. Who knows what that next opportunity looks like? And what I'm hearing from that too is, be innovative with your own products and services, not only how you intend to use them, but without diverting from your own company's strategic plan and mission, vision, and values. Find out how you can actually insert that value to meet the needs of a partner that might be seeking your services in a way that you hadn't yet envisioned. That's
yeah,
great.
I mean, how many spirits companies pivoted in the past 6 months to do a hand sanitizer, right? You can almost see it through the background, right? And like that's maybe not the 5-year plan for their business, but for the next 6 to 18 months, maybe that is like a really strong revenue source, and it's gotten you FaceTime with corporations who desperately needed it.
That's great. No, I love that. And actually, I'm seeing here in the chat that as it relates to Skolnick, they're actually now to the point of the COVID pivot. They are packaging potential COVID vaccine supplies right now with their products. So there you go. And Andrea in the chat, Andrea runs Eco Strategies Group, great company, and says, let's get those cans out of the trash and recycle them for you. So there you go. See, we're making these connections left and right. I love it. And I want to get one more question out to you both before we close out for today. And that is, so you'll meet a lot of people, whether it's in person or in this virtual setting. When you've met 100 suppliers in a day, what is the best way to get your attention? And again, I think it's important to reiterate this from the beginning of the conversation. How long should they wait before reaching out? What is an appropriate time to do so? So, Angela, let's start with you.
I would say an appropriate time would probably be in a couple weeks, maybe about three weeks perhaps. But the way, so when you register as a diverse supplier, you're going to get a notification. It's going to tell you this is our process, right? So this is the typical process, right? But if you get that letter and you're interested or you just want to follow up, I said give it a couple of weeks. Send me an email and say whatever you're going to say. And I can give you some information. If you participated in an RFP or an RFQ, then the feedback will more than likely come from the buyer, right? So they have a timeline that they have to follow about contacting, and once contracts are awarded, so they have a timeline. So if you're one of those suppliers that participated in an RFP or RFQ, then we got to kind of wait for that timeline. So I can't provide any feedback or any information about that until everything is kind of closed down. So, and I'll give you that feedback if you send me an email saying, hey, I participated in blah, 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 I haven't heard anything, then I can kind of give you an idea of kind of where things are in that process. So I would say a couple of weeks.
So after 100 suppliers, the best way to kind of be memorable and get my attention is like find me at the bar. You really, I think this goes back to the kind of comment I made before, like if I am the #1 company that you want to work with, why are you letting 100 people line up before I talk to you, right? We're human people, so my ability to remember 500 suppliers after a long expo day is very limited. So pick out the ones that are like super important and get them there early. But if it is a long expo day, maybe assess my body language, assess my energy level, and if it looks like I'm lagging, come up with a friendly handshake, make some small talk and say, hey, I know you're tired. Here's my card. Like, let's connect. Let me send you some information on this company some other time. Or, go from the 5-minute pitch to the 2-minute pitch, because that could be a saving grace at that moment, right? And so it's just a matter of being tactical. Definitely prioritize the folks that you have at the top of your sales list and get to them first. For me, after a conference, I would say the next week is like a really good time to send me the capability statement, because that's when I'm kind of farming the stuff out to my folks. But to Anjanetta's point, like, I hate getting an email from a supplier who hasn't registered in the portal first, who hasn't taken the steps, right? Like, so your first line is, hey, it was great meeting at the conference. We talked about Britney Spears. She's amazing. I've registered in your portal. Here's my capability statement. And then here are some of the things that we chatted about, or here are some of the highlights from my business. And then just like that reminds me that we talked and that you're a good person. And like, I can then forward you on and be fine.
That's great. Thank you both so much for sharing your insights today, folks. You have such great questions out there. We tried to get to as many as we possibly could. It sounds like we're probably going to need to do some sort of follow-up here so that we can make sure that we're able to answer all these burning questions. And maybe that's something we can do as a part of an NGLCC LGBT Sip and Pitch Fridays program. So Anjanetta, Casey, I want to say thank you so much for being here with us today. We just really appreciate all of the wisdom and all of the insights that you shared with the group. Of course, want to flag for everybody, we have another NGLCC Webinar Wednesdays program next week, as we do every Wednesday. Next week is actually going to be getting your certified product to store shelves. So that's something you don't want to miss out on. We're going to be hearing from another great set of folks, including businesses who are certified that have done this, and corporate supplier diversity professionals that have put their business or their products on the shelves. So going to be a very exciting program. We're here every Wednesday, 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern. Do not forget to tune in to NGLCC LGBT Sip and Pitch Fridays twice monthly on a Friday. Next one is this week, Friday, July 31st, 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern time. From 3 to 5, we do pitching. From 5 to 6, we do community and conversation. Again, this is another opportunity for you to connect with folks like Anjanetta and Casey. I know that both of them hardly miss any of those programs. So it's been so great to have you both here with us today. Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody that tuned in to participate, and have a great week. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, have pasta for dinner.